Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Who Moved My Career. I'm your host, Nicole McNamara, here with my co host, Sam. Hey, Sam. Good to see
Hi, everyone.
you.
You too.
And our awesome guest today, Mallory Byers. Mallory, it's so nice to see you. We met through kind of a funny way, even though we were in the same company at almost the same time. But you popped up for me on LinkedIn, and I was like, I have to know Mallory. Our worlds are way too closely aligned for us to not know each other. And so I'm super excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So, Mallory, you're going to tell us a little bit about your pivot, but I think your story is really interesting because it kind of covers the gamut from I had a pivot that I was not anticipating. That pivot opened a door that, I think we want to talk about this more, but I think that door that opened actually was the right door at the right time, even though it wasn't planned. And so we want to hear
Mhm.
about that because you spend a lot of your time right now coaching executives and high performers to think through what they're going through in their career, where the passion lies. You and I spend a lot of time talking about like that deep work that you have to do in order to kind of excel to the next level, which is tough, hard work. I think Sam and I have also experienced that in our own careers as well. So we're going to get into all of those things. But to get us kicked off, let's talk, Mallory, about where you were, what happened, what kind of precipitated the pivot that you were not expecting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at Salesforce for 9 years and I was a top performer. I was in recruiting. So I was working with our sales talent and bringing them in. And, it was probably about the 5, 6 year mark. I just started to kind of lose my steam internally, but externally, you would have no idea because then I started
Mm.
getting promoted. I started getting more higher level clients. I started to, be mentor. It was just go, 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 go. Because at the time, the high achiever in me is like, well, that's going to solve, that's going to solve, that's going to solve, you know, more money, all of that. And so here come the layoffs. And honestly, I did not think that I was going to be affected because being a top performer, you're like, no, 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 the company needs you, right? That wasn't the case. And so the layoff affected me and it rattled me. And when it happened, I lost myself. I lost who I was. I thought that I was going to be at Salesforce doing recruiting forever. And it was actually when the layoff happened that feeling of shoot, sorry, I don't know who I am.
Okay, we can say shit.
Okay.
That's
Like
how
I
I felt.
don't,
This is an
yeah,
adult podcast.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
great. Okay, okay,
No
okay.
kids.
So it was that feeling of like, who am I if I am not achieving something? Right. And that was when I've been in the self development space for a long time. So I did have the inclining to at least pause and be like, what is that? However, I had to do a lot of forgiveness of self to not
Mm.
look at myself at the 5 year mark when I knew that I was unhappy and I didn't know what it was, but I felt like this can't be it. Like the next promotion, it was Salesforce told me what to do and I did it. Mallory didn't have to like stand in her own and be like, what does Mallory want? What is she capable of? It was that somebody tell me what to do and I'll do it. Like the good girl in me. And it was that kind of shook me to be like, I have not been in the driver's seat of my life, let alone my career. And so that's why my whole concept is you've got to be the CEO of your career. You have to start to take ownership. And so it was I remember where I was, what I was wearing. I just moved into like an apartment that was 2 times more expensive than my old.
Perfect timing.
And perfect timing. I'm sitting on this lounge chair, boxes everywhere, and my boss calls. And there was a moment that like there was this like, oh, and I had to get curious about that. And
Mhm.
so that is what led me to coaching. That said though, it's like the part of us that we don't do enough of is why? Why was I so tied my worth to my success? You know,
Yes.
who I was to what level I was. And it took me getting out of it to really see, wow, my potential has been capped. And that's when I had to start rewiring all this, because what I had seen is that I didn't trust myself. You tell me what my next move is, and I'll do it, and I'll do it well. But you tell me I have to go figure it out by myself. Ooh, that's scary. So that's where the inner work started to come in. Where did that come from? Why was that part of my patterning? And so I'm so blessed because now, hey, starting a business, you got to trust yourself real well, you know? So it has been like a big transformation for me, really.
When you say that you took sort of a sigh of relief when you got that call,
Yeah.
could you dig into that a little bit more? You were grateful that you no longer had to be sort of stuck in this machine that you weren't in the driver's seat of.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because my whole body, like everything around me was dark and fear, 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 fear. It's like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? But then when I just like took a minute, there was like this, I'm a visual person, but there was like this like bright light just kind of from my heart. And I didn't know what it really was at the time. I just knew that there was like this sense of, ooh, what's next? Right. I had no idea. I had no idea, honestly, because when I got to the root of like, this all came from a lack of self trust, never in my life would you hear me say, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. No, but here we are. You know,
Mhm.
like these patterns can get rewritten if we take the time to actually do the work.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's all of us on this screen on this call today have spent many consecutive years at the same organization, and there's something that does to you in terms of loyalty and commitment. Um, as people who have spent many years at the same organization, you sort of get so wrapped up in the path that you're
Mhm.
on. And I think there's just this like inward, you do become the CEO of your career internally, but
Mhm.
what you forget about is that there's this whole world out there.
Yeah.
And it struck me when you talked about the perspective that stepping out of that world, that internal focus, um, gave you that perspective to reflect and then to sort of do things differently going forward. So I think this reflection point is super important. What did you do to to reflect? Because a lot of people quit their jobs or get laid off, and they're in this period where it's chaotic.
Yeah.
They're not really reflecting. There's fear. They're worrying. They're still in that mode of do. I need to get a meeting. I need to network. I need to do this without necessarily taking that time to say, but wait a minute, let me just, number one, reflect on my successes over this time and
Mhm.
not just think like I'm a failure for stopping doing the thing that I've been doing for the last 10 years. But
Yeah.
what does it take to really dig in? And what do you recommend your clients do?
Yeah, it's such a complex question, and it's also quite simple. There's a couple layers. So the first is, I'll put my recruiter hat back on. I can always tell when someone is running towards something or if they're running away from something. So it shows up in your interviews.
Hmm.
So be mindful of that, because recruiters and hiring managers can really notice that, and they don't want to hire somebody that is running from something. They want somebody that's really grounded in who they are, what it is they bring to the table, their value. So keep that in mind. The other thing that kind of came through as you were talking is the thing that I think people forget is that, like, I did love my career for a long part of it, and we were good at it, right? And I think that when we get laid off or something, we think that that's taken away. But I want to remind us that who we got to become in that role is a reflection of us. It's not the company. But we're so
Mm.
quick to be like Salesforce, or whatever company. But it's like, no, no, no. I stepped into my power in that role. And when you step into your power in a role, guess what? You get to take that power with you elsewhere. So it's, again, it is reflecting on the parts of the job that you really liked, and you got to feel seen, and you felt empowered, and you felt like people were listening to you. Whatever that was, that is something that is in you. But we're so quick to be like, oh God, what am I going to do without the company? No, no, no. That's like innately in you.
But it is
Um,
crazy, right? I mean, like, if
oh,
you I mean, I was talking to someone this week and, we were talking about Salesforce in particular, and they were like, "Oh, that's a cult." And I was like, "Eh, I don't subscribe to that, but yes, they are very, culture centric in a very heavy way." But I don't think that's just Salesforce. I think that the
mm,
vast majority of companies are really good at hooking you up to an IV of their making. And when that IV, even though it's actually a two-way IV, you're actually giving much more than they are putting back into your body. But it is like, and I'm sure there are books written on this, so I should probably read some, but it's crazy the transfer of value that happens between employee and employer. How when one piece of that stool gets ripped out, all of a sudden it's like you didn't do any of the things that made you really successful when you were. And that's just like, a rational person sees that. But when it
yeah,
happens to you, you don't. And to me, that is the like problem for the century, to figure out how we, to your very point, Mallory, regain and deeply understand our own power and know that we're the ones that made all those things happen, not them.
yeah, yeah,
And so I know one of the things that you talk a lot about is being really cognizant of the patterns that you experience through your career in good times and bad, but how they translate when you're on the other side or when a transition has been forced upon you. Can you talk a little bit about, because I love this idea that you had about pattern disruption and what you're trying to do both for yourself in terms of recognizing your own patterns and saying, I need to stop that,
yeah.
or trying to position yourself in a job market, it's all about pattern disruption.
Yes. So they're actually two different things. And I definitely want to talk about pattern disruption when it comes to interviewing. Um, but as far as even going back to Sam, like your question of like, how do you actually do this stuff? This is all our our nervous system. And I know that it's almost like the nervous system has become a buzzword, which I just hate, but it's there's like 5 personality patterns that we fall into, and it's basically a map of our nervous system. And it's Stephen Kessler's approach, where there's various patterns, like there's leaving, merging pattern, aggressive, rigid, and enduring. And high achievers really do lean towards more of the rigid and like the control aspect, and also the aggressive, because if we're not succeeding, then who are we? And these patterns were ingrained in us somewhere in childhood. And so if we don't start to take our patterns of how we're showing up at work and start to bring awareness to them, then we're just going to be having these same patterns, but even at a different company, where like you're just overachieving to feel safe, right? And so what happens is that when you start to feel safe in your body, you actually perform even higher. And that's the missing link. I think that people are sometimes afraid of almost getting rid of their inner critic, because they're like, well, that's what motivates me. But it's capping you, right? Um, and so I think that part of this is just becoming really, really aware of these certain patterns. And it's not about getting rid of them, because we can't. It's about healing them. And when we heal them, then we show up in a very different way to work. We are so much more grounded. We are present. We are able to kind of give bad, not bad, hard feedback, right? we actually raise our hand for the promotion, not just say we want it, but then do nothing about it, right? It's like safe to feel and be seen in our career, not just like for me, I just sort of was following the path. So, because there was like a lack of safety that I felt. And it wasn't external safety, like I was getting harmed, but it's like an internal safety. Does that resonate with you guys? Because I know that the concept and bringing it into like career coaching is a little like,
Oh, no, totally resonates with us. Nicole and I are big believers that, I mean, we're both people who have talked about our stories of our own self-worth being tied to our performance and
yeah,
our work and the brand of the companies that we work for, honestly.
yeah,
And we've both gone through this process of separating those things and carving our own new paths. And so everything that you're talking about in terms of feeling safe. I mean, I think there's the stability that comes with working for a name brand organization in terms of the paycheck, the sort of consistency. Those are things that could make you feel safe and make you perform while you're there. When you are shaken up or shake yourself up out of that
yeah,
situation, everything around you feels unsafe. And I think you go through this period of having to let the ground kind of settle and dig your like legs into the foundation again, like plant new roots so that you can move forward.
I mean, and frankly, I did that. I got a recruiter at a tech company, very similar, good pay. I got an offer, and my old self would have just been like, "Oh, great, let's go," right? But because I spent the time to actually understand some of my patterns, learn how to feel safe without that, right?
Mhm.
Then I was able to think clearly about my future, not like, okay, right this second.
Yes,
That's fear based, it's scarcity based.
exactly. I mean, I think this comes into play in so many areas of work, whether it's that you're looking for a job, or even in your job, when we uncertainty, we don't function well as planners of our careers and lives when we don't know what's ahead. So we always want to sort of stay one step ahead. And when I stepped away from work for a while in the more traditional sense of like working for a corporation, I was faced with this like figuring out of my gosh, how do I operate just on my daily basis? Like, how do I still work out? How do I still eat healthy? How do I still do these things when I have no idea what's ahead?
Yeah,
How do I still go to the grocery store and buy things? How do I plan vacations with people? When I have no idea what's coming next? And getting comfortable and feeling safe in that uncertainty becomes a superpower because then you can do anything. Then it doesn't matter. Like you can take the risk and if it doesn't work out, you can move to the next thing. So what advice do you have for people for like getting comfortable with that uncertainty?
yeah. So, and this kind of gets a little complex, but I think that the best thing that you can do, even when you're trying to like that, what you were just talking about, that is very much an unregulated nervous system, right? So you're not actually even able to think clearly. Your brain is like thinks it's thinking clearly because you're like, okay, well, my next move is this and it's this and this and this. Okay, then I can ask this. That's still a sign of a very dysregulated nervous system. So I think what people don't allow for is the space to actually regulate. And it doesn't take like a bajillion years, right? But you're just conditioned that way. And so you're operating from dysregulation. So you're
Hmm.
not even able to think creatively, to think strategically, right? You're just very one-minded in that area. Um, and I think what helps is to feel it. People don't feel. They think they feel because they're emotional. I'm upset because I got laid off. But when we feel, like actually feel it in the body, and this takes practice. It takes sometimes having somebody guide you through, okay, where are you feeling that in your body? What is the sensation? It takes 90 seconds and then it starts to release. But when we don't do that, it stays caught in our bodies. So even these decisions on what I want to do next in my career, you're not able to think big. You're not able to think big picture. You're more comfortable playing small. So the unknown, it is scary. And when you kind of heal some of these inner woundings, you start to step into a different version of yourself that I hadn't met yet. Because I'm somebody, if I don't know what my next step looks like, oh, that's scary, man. That's how I operated.
Mallory, a lot of our listeners have had a recent layoff journey, and that's kind of where we started, and that was the impetus. But I think also a lot of folks are not getting laid off, and they have a steady paycheck, and that's great. And the job market is real squirrely and weird, and everyone's throwing around the word AI and no one knows what that means. And so it's kind of a security blanket. But at the same time, back to the kind of like nervous system feeling, I think there are a lot of our listeners out there who are like, this feels fine. And I'm glad I have a job and I'm glad I'm employed. But I also have this little gnawing feeling at me that maybe I'm meant for something else. And maybe I have an idea, and maybe there is another path. And I think a lot of people push it to the side
Yeah.
and don't do anything with it. And I always feel like those are the people that, on their deathbed talk about, I wish I had, I regret that I didn't. Um, and I think one of the things that we all hope is that when we leave this world, we our regret list is relatively short. So if somebody is feeling that, and that like nagging, itching feeling that perhaps there is something else for me, how do you tap into that in a way in which also doesn't put your steady paycheck at risk?
Yeah. So what I would say, because that's fear, right? So one question is, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And just start to get really curious about that answer, because you might say, I'll never work again and I want to go live on a yacht forever. It's like, okay, so there's a part of you that needs to have like simplicity. Or, I did have a client who wanted to be a rock star. And it wasn't that he wanted to actually be a rock star when we dug down. I mean, go be a rock star if you want to, but it was that he really wanted to be seen on a public stage and have people look at him in awe. So we worked toward that. Now he does events where he's like actually speaking, right? So I think that the thing that people need to start asking is, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And when you start to just answer that question, you don't have to do anything with it, but you can't unhear it, right? So then you're going to start to be like, okay, maybe we look at it. And I think also it's not always about just go to a different career, go start a business. It's how do you make your job right now more enjoyable, right?
Mm.
And I think that's the piece too. Or I think when people think career coaching, it's like, I need to find a job. No, no, no. I think that I do believe that there's career coaches that work within these corporations, but that's for the betterment of the company, not the betterment of the employee. And so to your point, it's like, okay, I need to work with somebody that has my best interest, helps me see my career, where I want to go next, where am I missing the link? How do I think about my career outside of the company that I'm currently in? Or how do I navigate internally at the company to different roles? It's like being able to start to take ownership of your career, not just what the company wants you to do.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of that, and we've talked about this in prior episodes, Nicole, is just being a little bit selfish about your network. How do you we always talk about like, what can we pour into the organizations that we work for, which we live by, right? Because we're proud of the work that we do and we want to have a positive impact. But I think just centering ourselves in that, and I will never work the other way again. I now approach jobs by like centering myself and saying, what are the relationships that I have access to in this role that might serve me later on? And I think you don't necessarily always think so far down the line when you're
Yeah.
like so in something with your head
No.
down. But it's so important to be a bit selfish about your own career wherever you're working, whether it's in your own business even. I think like even for people who have their own business, Nicole, and other of our listeners, maybe Mallory yourself too. Um, you're focusing on the business, but the business isn't you. And so
Right.
how do you take that time and be selfish for yourself while you're out there building your business to think about like, what are these things that I really want for my future? And how do I use my time to make sure I'm planting seeds so that I could
Yep.
potentially do other things later on?
100%. I mean, I'm even still unraveling my corporatism, if you will,
Yeah.
like the other day, because I'm like excited about something I'm working on. And I just started working from, it was like all day. And I'm like, okay, let's go, 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 go. And it was like, I didn't do yoga. I don't even think that I got dressed. I was in pajama. It was like, oh, this is like the old me where like I just
Mm.
need to get it done so people can see it. And it's like, actually, what I need was the yoga class. What I need is to take a break with my girlfriends who then we start spitballing ideas. And I'm like, oh, well, that's how I tie this together. It's like, we don't let the external world actually be the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So my one of my huge takeaways from this chat is really try to be as present as
Yeah.
possible, so that you're not so focused on doing,
Yeah.
but you give yourself time to regulate, to reflect, and to to do those things. Invest in yourself by taking care of your health, building new relationships, that put you back in the driver's seat
Yeah.
of your own life and allow you to, yeah, as you said, be the CEO of your own career.
Yeah. And when you find yourself out of alignment, just start to get curious because there's a part of you that's creeping in of like, oh, I am working so hard so they validate my being. So it's like it's just getting curious about those parts of us that are kind of in that wounded space. Um sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just I because I know that I didn't talk about the pattern interruption when it comes to interviewing. And I just want to just
It's such a it's and yeah, thank you for pointing it out. It's when you and I discussed it, so much of life is like right there in your face and you just need to be open to hearing it at the perfect time and the planets be in alignment. And when you and I talked about pattern disruption specifically on the interviewing side, I was like, yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but it does make so much sense. And especially I think right now in the job market in particular, which like so much noise and everybody's got some shtick that they're trying to pitch. So yeah, I think that's great advice for our listeners. If you wouldn't mind just spending a couple minutes on that.
Yeah. And it's really kind of simple. It's so for example, it's what am I doing to get the job? I'm applying, I'm reaching out to hiring managers. That's like now like the norm. But now it's like, how do I interrupt with that pattern? And where I'm seeing like clients really get in now is pick up the phone, do a cold call, especially in sales. That's the most beautiful part about having a sales role is that you're actually showing them how you sell in the interview. Pick up a phone, cold call them, follow up on the email, ask, obviously provide value and get the interview. That's the kind of stuff. If for sales too, it's like I get that people are doing reach outs to hiring managers. If you're not, you need to be. But it's also just, I need to maybe do a deal review. If they're in the auto industry, how can I relate that? It's making sure that you're really bringing value to every conversation in a way that's different. So get on a voice memo app on LinkedIn and give them a voice memo instead of an email. Do a video. And it feels silly, especially for executives. You're high up. But it's just the market is saturated with people looking for jobs. So think of everything that you want to be doing. Be like, okay, how can I up level this?
Yeah, I think that's I worry a little bit about sharing this information on a podcast that gets to a whole bunch of people. Now everybody's pattern interrupting. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, what's the pattern interrupt for the pattern interrupt? Like it it I agree with you, especially on the how do you deliver value and how do you talk about your value. One of the things I used to tell my team was just show up with a gift. And I don't mean a candle unless there's dinner, in which case bring a candle. But show up with a gift. Something that, an article that you read about their customers that you think they should read, or, a piece of thought leadership that's out there. Like that's the value piece. And I again, so much of this goes back to the introspective work that needs to happen, and you need to understand yourself. I was saying that we had last week someone on who wrote the book called The Layoff Journey, and
Mm.
he talked about how his first layoff took him 18 months. And when he said that, I was like, wow, that's like a really long time. But if you think about how long it takes you to get off of a layoff, as a percentage of how long you were engaged with the company that laid you off, well, maybe that makes sense, right? And now,
Yeah.
especially if you're a first layoff, right? I mean, I think as time goes on, you change that a little bit, but um, that internal dialogue and that ability to have a conversation with yourself about what is the possibility, barring all realities. That should also be a little fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, I did this. I remember, I had a coach who said, "I want you to lay on the ground." And I was immediately like, "That's not
Yeah.
happening." She was like, "Okay, I want you to lay in your bed." I was like, "That sounds much better." I want you to lay in your bed. And she said, "And I want you to put a piece of paper on your chest
Mm.
and hold a pen. And I just want you to lay there in silence for a half an hour." This sounded like murder to me. Okay. Like keep going. Let's move. What's next on the agenda? Like doing anything quietly for half an hour is my definition of a living hell.
Yeah.
And she said, anything that comes to your mind, I want you to write down. And I thought she was a total wackadoo when she told me this, Mallory. I was like, okay, wow. Have you told somebody this kind of advice recently? Yeah.
I
Well, I
love
did
when,
it.
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I definitely pushed it off for, like,
yeah, of
4 months,
course.
and then I was like, "Ugh, fine." Um, and I did it, and I was really amazed at the things that came up for me because it had nothing to do with my career, by the way.
Mhm.
What I noticed was my own patterns of the things that did pop into my mind, and I was able to take that, and some of it was valuable for career stuff, but most of it was just like, well, if this is what I'm thinking about when I have nothing else to think about, that means it really means something to me. That means that it's like a high level value for me. And someone the other day, we were having a conversation about values alignment, and they said, "Nicole, the reason you do the podcast is because you like to help people." And like, I wanted to choke them. I was like, oh, that sounds awful. Like I was kind of grateful, but I was like, "Oh, that sounds so cringy." But what I found when I looked at that piece of paper was, what am I doing for my kids? What am I doing for my friends? What am I doing for my husband? And actually, it was all about how do you help other people? And then I thought about the podcast and I was like, it's helpful for other people. So I cringed a little bit, but I'm curious, is that a technique you use with people?
Not that one in particular, but I like it. I think that there's so many amazing techniques you can use. One thing that I will say when you were talking about the person that it took 18 months,
Mhm.
I think what we, again, kind of circling back, what we don't give credit to is the fact that our worth was tied to our output at the company. And so then when we don't feel worthy, and maybe it's subconscious too, then we're not aggressive. We're not putting ourselves out there in the most effective way to get the job, to actually sell ourselves and sell the value that we actually do bring to this next company. We're a little more muted. So it's like, I understand that the job market is tough right now. And I think that there is a layer that keeps us stuck in the job market because we don't know really who we are outside of that job.
I'm in violent agreement with you. We had someone on the podcast really early on, and he has this philosophy that you have to be like idiot proof in terms of what you want. I want to do this for this company and here's why. And that's it. And I mean, I've experienced this when people have said, how can I help? And a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I don't want to be a trouble. It doesn't work. Like, you have to own your confidence. You have to own your own value in a way in which, especially for high performers, by the way, I think this is incredibly difficult for high performers.
Yeah.
Like, owning it and being okay with it, because we are so used to doing the thing that is right in front of us and knocking it down and knocking it down and getting the next one. But, then all of a sudden you have to generate the next thing yourself. That is a real struggle. But that level of clarity and being able to say, this is what I want to do and here's why. When you get that wrong, people know. I don't know. And I knew this when I was a hiring manager. I was like, I think you just want to work at Salesforce and you are going to get this job and then immediately look for something else because that's actually what you want to do. I wish you would just tell me that on some
Yeah.
level, but it's tough work. It is tough, introspective work. And I think a lot of people, the same people that struggle with going to therapy, I think struggle in coaching.
Yeah.
They're very aligned with one another.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like and sometimes having these big goals or knowing exactly what you want, people don't know because subconsciously they are terrified that if they actually name the thing that they want and they don't get it, then that
Mm.
again is proof that they're not good enough. So do you see? It's like that's
This
again,
vicious cycle. It can either be a cycle in a positive direction or it can be a
mhm,
cycle in a very negative direction. Yeah.
right. So you just have to learn to get curious about that part of you that doesn't feel enough. Because like all of this stuff, we can get over the ledge. Like, we can come out of it. We just have to do the work to get there. And it's practice and it does take work. But
Mallory,
yeah.
what is the one pattern you see the most in the people you coach?
Well, I think like the deep pattern when we kind of get to like the root of it is that feeling of abandonment and a feeling of the lack of
Mm,
self-worth because they think that it's like I need the money, which of course, yes, but then when you kind of go deeper, then it's like, well, if I don't provide for my family, then my husband's going to leave me. And if my husband leaves me, then I end up all alone.
mm.
So it's like there's these layers, and that's again that root that we have to kind of get to. Everybody is a little bit different, but I think that innate not feeling good enough, that hence imposter syndrome, people staying in roles for too long, right?
Mhm.
That's like a deep theme.
I think you must be a very good coach. I had a coach who um said something very similar to me, and the question was essentially like, what's stopping you? And I gave some answer. I don't exactly remember what it was. And she was like, yeah, you know that I'm not going to let you off the hook with
Yeah,
that. You know
yeah,
that there is something else. And I was like, no, 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 that's it. And she was like, I'll wait.
yeah.
And you know, one of the beauties of being in a high-paced, high-powered role is you can ignore a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And you can think that you're filling your bucket in a certain way and not have to take a look in the mirror. And I think one of the things I hope personally that this podcast allows people to do is to press pause, not on the podcast. We want you to listen forever, but press pause on what you're doing day to day and just examine, is this what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
And if the answer is 100% yes, then awesome. You are in a better space than 90% of people these days. But if
Yeah.
the answer is, there's no harm in going down and wandering the valley of possibilities. Um,
100%. Not to interrupt you, but I think that especially high performers, high achievers need to hear because it's scary, right? You're like, no, everything is fine. I don't need to do that. So they just sort of like muddy it. But the thing is like when you do go down this like inner work journey, you can make more money. You can achieve more. You have more time. You have more freedom. Like, I want you to understand that the result is still like what us high achievers want: more money, more time, more impact, right? So I
Mhm.
think that it's reminding ourselves too that this is a gateway for more of that.
And the things that you learn about yourself in that process, yes, are helpful for your career, but 9 times out of 10, those same patterns are showing up in your family, in your friendships, in your hobbies, and that level of introspection, I think, is additive throughout your life. And ultimately, to your point, leads to better outcomes. And it's funny, I think sometimes I wonder sometimes if my kids have the same algorithm as I do on Instagram. I'm 100% positive they don't. But I see a lot more conversation right now about how to up level and
Mhm.
how to, you see all these couples that are like, we take 2 days off in the beginning of the year and we do a strategy meeting and we give each other feedback. And to me, that is all goodness
Mhm.
because in the hustle and bustle of being a parent and being a working person or, all of the myriad of things or caretaker or something else multi hyphenate, you forget that level of clarity about who you are and what you want to do and what you want to be and where you can improve your own self gets lost. And sometimes I think we keep ourselves busy so that we don't need to think about it. And that dulls the senses, which is a mistake.
100%. My client the other day was like, she came to me for career stuff and she's like, my relationship is better. I'm having sex more. I'm now like at my kids' games. Like it's a ripple effect,
Yeah.
right? And that's because you're doing the inner work. And it's the stuff that like actually is the solution to the non-career stuff, which I just love. It's fascinating. It's all connected.
Well, Mallory, I mean, as you and I have discussed before, and much of what this podcast talk about, like sometimes life throws you a
Mhm.
curveball that you wouldn't have put on a map. You would have never had laid out in kind of your vision for where you are. And um, it works out for the best for a million reasons.
Yes.
And so it
It-
really feels to me like that has been your experience. So I
yeah.
would also, encourage our listeners like, yes, this is really good advice, but also sometimes these things happen for a reason that you just don't know until you do.
Yeah, and let that in. Let it
Yeah,
be
be
your
open to it. Be
yeah.
open to it. I also would like to believe, and this is like a whole other podcast episode, but I also believe that there is a slow undercurrent that is shifting the narrative around how we work and our relationship between ourselves and the machine. That is
Mhm.
a whole nother future of work kind of a conversation. But that starts with people understanding themselves,
Yeah.
understanding their unique role in the world and what they can bring. And they need help with that. And that's why people like Mallory Byers exist. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you and I found each other. I can't believe we didn't actually work together at
I
Salesforce's
know.
HR. Um, I think I asked you if you knew my recruiter. Anyway, he's also going through a career pivot. So I'll share your information with him because he's
Yeah.
awesome. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I thought this
So
conversation was awesome. If people wanted to work with you, Mallory, what's the best way to do that? Also, I'm sure people already have, but look on Mallory's LinkedIn. I think you have one of the best LinkedIns in the business, also takes the greatest pictures on the planet, but you have this thing about, like, when the job feels soul crushing, and God, do we not all everyone has had a soul crushing moment in their career, so I just thought that just, like, resonated so much, but how do people find you and work with you?
yeah, I would say find me on LinkedIn, and we can set up a free call and we can just chat. I mean, I'm very
Love that.
one-on-one that I want you to feel connected to me. So even if we don't work together, I'm open to just chatting.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell our listeners that Mallory is giving one free call and consultation if you say you got here from the podcast.
Yes.
Woo! Love that. Little cross
Yeah.
promo.
Yeah.
Um, and just thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing this advice. Thanks for always answering my texts and doing this work and anything that the show or I can do to personally support you. I'm a huge fan. Love what you're doing. Love the hard introspective work and I'm just here for it. So thank you so much. Thank you to our listeners. Go lay in a dark room with a piece of paper on your chest and see what comes up. But before you grab that piece of paper, make sure you like and subscribe and share and all the things so that we can get this word out because This is really good stuff, y'all. So thank you so much, Mallory. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.